Hi, guys. How are you today? Welcome to It Tastes Different Gaming. I'm going to need you to do something for me. I'm going to need to click that like, that subscribe, click that little bell. It gives you notifications. Come be a part of the family. Come join us. Please. Please. Click the button. Do it. What's on the menu? We open up the can of baked beans and we set them on the campfire with Solasta, Crown of the Magister. Solasta, Crown of the Magister was released May 27th on PC only. The publisher and developer were both Tactical Adventures. And this game here is a tabletop RPG that is put onto a computer. Pretty cool stuff. So let's get right into this. Let's go. Let's see. Let's spin the wheel. Let's go with Nick. Nick, what did you think of this game?
I loved it. This was a great RPG. I mean, it follows the Dungeons and Dragons rule set. I believe Dungeons and Dragons rule set edition 5. And it kind of brings me back to the days of and it kind of reminds me of Dungeon Siege, like the very first one. It kind of brings me back to that feeling of Dungeon Siege and like Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and all those great isometric RPGs. And this is right there in line. I love this game. I haven't finished it yet. It's a pretty long game, but I've been going through fighting monsters and collecting materials and crafts and alchemy things, make potions and stuff. And you get to you can start the game with their preset characters, but even the game recommends you create your own, and I would recommend it as well. Creating your own characters is fantastic. It's a lot of fun, and you get to build out the characters you want. Pretty much everything is voice acted in this game. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better tabletop RPG than this. I mean, this is top tier. I think probably one of the best tabletop RPGs in a long time that we've gotten, and I really, really enjoy it. But I won't boast too much about it until we go around the room. So how about you, Shane? Let's go to you next, man. What do you think?
For a game that I completely suck butt at, I love this game. It was really hard for me to get used to at first. I'm not a huge PC player. Getting used to the camera on it was probably my biggest issue. That and I dumbed down the difficulty like you recommended, and but I really enjoyed it. My problem with it is I'm just bad at it. But the graphics are nice. The characters are pretty cool. The voice acting, hit and miss, but I was surprised I enjoyed the game as much as I did. I was really surprised, actually, because this is definitely more of a U3 kind of game than it is a me kind of game. But I think you guys have broadened my horizons a little bit, which is nice because now I have more things that I can enjoy to play. And I enjoy this game. I was really surprised. I just wished I was better with the keyboard and mouse. That's hard for me still, but I'm getting better. There was many a time I died, like sneaking. I would die because I couldn't get the camera to go like my brain was telling me it would go. I'd go the opposite way, and next thing you know, I get busted. But that's on me. Everything else I've really enjoyed about the game. I'm pleasantly surprised. What about you, Pat? I got a feeling you like it. Just a clue, just a hint.
Yeah, these are my type of game. It's a tactical RPG, really. I mean, when you think about it, the company's name is kind of right in there, right? I mean, it's an RPG game. It's very much tactical. It's turn-based combat. And it uses, like Nick said, the D&D 5.1 rule set. So it's got all the RPG elements, and it was a Kickstarter game that actually came through pretty quick. I think this one was kickstarted in like September of 2019, and here we are in June 2021, and we're wrapping up a playthrough of this one. And I also have not beat it, but I'm also on the final chapter. I know I'm on the final chapter because it says beware once you start this, you can't go back, and you're like, okay, so I'm on the final chapter. The game uses the D&D rule set, but doesn't pull from the D&D world at all. It's its own story and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's everything you want. It's got races, it's got classes, it's got deities, it's got everything. It's got Garmer crafting. It's got a little bit of everything for all those people. Whoever likes RPGs, especially turn-based, tactical-based RPGs, fantasy world. So no guns or anything like that in this one. You're going to like that. The closest thing you got to is bows and crossbows. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can't wait to finish it, and I will finish it. I'm really close. Probably in the next few days, I'll end up finishing this one. Russ, what'd you think of this one, man?
This is classic. I think each one of you guys kind of have a great point. I think Nick's with that original Dungeon Siege. I mean, that's where I was going at. I was like, man, this is really familiar. This is feeling really good. And it feels like it's been a good minute before we've had something that is this balanced. And what I mean by balance is like Patrick said, even Nick, I think, said it too. It's all voiced over. I know Shane kind of busts on the voiceover a little bit, but really, when you consider how much is in this game, I'll give them a little bit of leeway on the voice acting. It's fantastic. You really do have some customization whenever you build your characters. You really can lean to your play style in an RPG, because there's not just one way to do it. I mean, if you want to go in there and try to shoot them up, you better be ready to craft a lot of pots. If you want to go in there and be completely tactical and you want to have a couple of rogues, you can even do that. I mean, there's so many different ways. And that, I think, is what really is the thrill for us, is that we can play to our own styles. Ironically enough, I think me and Nick built the same 3 characters. I'm trying to do something a little bit different with the Paladin, but it's how we play. It's how we want to play it. That's the great thing about it. Will you die a lot? Will you have some difficulties if you've never played a game? Yes, you will. You're going to have those difficulties. But once you get used to where your mindset needs to be, where you need to basically strategize, then you'll start rolling through some quests. You'll start rolling through it, and you'll realize, okay, if I'm using the buffs on this guy, it's going to double up on this damage. And again, you'll have times where your dice are just not working. They just don't work. You're like praying. You're like, please just get one roll, one crit strike. And it is that kind of game, but it is a fantastic surprise. Me being out of kind of the cutting edge right now for games, I really appreciate Nick and Pat for coming up with this one and us reviewing it, because it's been a couple of 3 games since I've been actually wanting to play a game. I'm probably still not near as far as Pat and Nick, but I think I'm getting close to the library. But it's really good stuff. So we're going to open the floor here for probably some more raving about the game, but let it begin.
Yeah, I mean, we could just talk about what makes it typical, what some of the features of the game. I mean, so basically the game has 6 classes. You have your cleric, your fighter, your paladin, your ranger, your rogue, wizard. And there's talk of a DLC that'll introduce a sorcerer down the road at some point. But those are your 6 classes, and every class has subclasses, and it's mind-boggling the number of combinations you can get. I mean, the cleric alone has 9 subclasses, and then all the rest of them have 3 subclasses. And the subclasses do things like change the type of spells that you're going to be wielding and stuff like that. So there's so many different things, and then there's also races. You have your main 5, your human, your half elf, your dwarf, your elf, and your halfling. And then those have sub races under them. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to build out your team. So I would say, I would agree with Nick and all them. Make sure that you don't use the starting classes and races. Build your own, because you get to pick things like their attitude, like whether they grew up on the streets or whether they grew up a hoity-toity house, whatever, and it changes the dialogue within the game, because I did the typical where my rogue, my rogue was basically brought up on the streets, and she's a trash talking little halfling and just runs her mouth every time we get into a situation, and I made my elf chick is like a hoity-toity, like higher than thou chick, and you get into conversations and she's like, oh, it's dirty, and and just all kinds of weird stuff. So make your own classes and characters, your races and classes, pick them, mix and match them. Yes, you could screw up your party, but you can't really, you're not going to screw it up too bad to where it's not playable. I mean, really, if you think about it, in any RPG, you need the Holy Trinity, right? You need a healer, you need a tank, and you need DPS, and you're a 4-person party. You can kind of forego healing in this game if you just want to pot it up and buy and spend a lot of money in pots. You don't have to have a healer. It's really nice to have a healer, because I have a healer in my party and it makes things a lot nicer. And I don't spend money on pots. Anybody on my team very rarely uses a pot. But you have to try this game out. If you like RPGs, this is something that you really need to dive into. I don't want to steal all the things about the game. Maybe somebody else wants to touch on some of the other aspects of the game. I talked about the classes and the races. Somebody want to talk about some of the other mechanics?
Yeah, just since, this one's a little more, definitely more out of my typical game range. It was difficult for me to start up because I kept having problems controlling the camera, WQR, WSD, whatever the hell. It just, my brain doesn't work that way for keyboard and mouse. And I can do shooters a lot better because I've been practicing with this new computer because I've been, primary console forever. But the game, it did teach you quite well all the way up to probably an hour in, the different mechanics of the game, different fighting mechanics of the game. And all that. I was very happy the tutorial mechanics on it. That was probably one thing I definitely got to give kudos because it wasn't too hand holding the entire time. It felt like, but they definitely made sure you understood how each thing worked instead of going, oh crap, how did this happen again? How did I do that? I don't remember. It was very clear. It was easy to pick up on. Any of the issues, like I said, I had. That was all on me, sadly, but it was all on me.
Yeah. So the nice thing about this game too, or one of the cool aspects is, traveling. You get different traveling options, depending on how, kind of what interactions and various things how many long rests, you want it to be. This game has short rests and long rests. So if you played RPGs, tabletop RPGs, what that consists of. The nice thing too is you'll come across encounters and sometimes your group gets surprised and then sometimes they are able to spot those encounters. So kind of the nice thing is when you are on the road traveling from one point A to point B is that, if your members end up spotting these enemies, you can hide from them and not have to combat them if you don't want to, right? You can if you want to, or you don't have to, but sometimes you are surprised. The nice thing too is when you do long rests, then you get to prepare spells. Right. And so that's a nice thing to have, too, because your mages and your paladins and anybody that has any type of spells are going to have a huge collection of spells, but you can only have so many. So preparing spells allows you to have those on hand when you're going into your next expedition. And, there's a lot of tactical thought that goes into that, too. Like what spells do I want to bring? Plus those level 2, those higher level spells. Your wizard has some cantrip spells, which are just our normal spells. They can cast them all the time. But then they have level 1, level 2, and so on and so forth types of spells that only have so many times you can use them, right? Same thing with your warriors and stuff. They have actions such as surge and second wind and various things like that. And those can only be used in a one-time scenario. So you really got to think about, do I want to cast magic missile, right? Because magic missile is an awesome spell, but cast it too many times and you get to that strong boss and now you don't have magic missile anymore, right? Or you want to use surge or second wind or something like that with your warrior. Do you need to use that now? So you really, even with a combat and even with preparing what skill or what spells and various things that you need to use, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Is, do I want to use all these spells now? What spells do I want to bring with me? What type of enemies do I think I'm going to encounter in this next area? You can get a little bit of lore about the area you're going into. So maybe you might know what you're going to get into. And, essentially you're probably going to end up finding spells that you really like. And that's what you're going to take with you most of the time. Right. I mean, that's magic missile for me. I always take magic missile. I love magic missile because I can hit several things or one thing several times. But it just depends on what you want. And yeah, I mean, everything about this game is really cool. I mean, even like, the ability for your characters to jump, right? There's several places where they can jump to different, far away canopies or whatever that are pretty far distance, and they have to jump there, and then some of them will try and they'll do like a dexterity roll, right? or a agility roll, and if they fail, they might be splat on the ground, right? Or maybe down for a little bit. So it's kind of funny to see that happen, but you're hoping everybody can jump except for my mate. She just says, no, I'll take the scenic route. Because she ain't jumping. Everybody else is jumping across the canyon, and she's like, no, I'm just going to crawl down this vine and go around. I'll meet you there in a minute. But you also got to think about that too. You don't want to carry, if you do have characters like that, you want to make sure that they get up with the group, because you don't want to get into a scenario where you join a fight and the one that can't jump is 5 yards away, right? And then you're like spending all your time trying to get them right up there to the enemy, and they're so far behind. So you got to take it slow and cautious, but I mean, that's a part of the fun of the game. You never know where you're going to get into encounter. They have that fog of war, so you just kind of make sure that your group is together. And, either you're hiding, you can use stealth, like Shane was saying, to kind of sneak in and maybe attack the enemy first before you go into combat, or maybe avoid the enemy altogether. But yeah, it's a lot of tactical thought that goes into this game, and that's what makes it fun. It's just a lot of fun with that stuff.
Cool. I did that on more than one occasion where my mage just, like, I remember going into 2 fights where I went ahead and overextended my mage's jump, not knowing that I was going to be into a battle, and my mage was actually down, I think, 2 full turns. My mage was still getting off her ass to come help with the fight. And I'm like, and I think one of the first times it happened to me, we had like 2 aerial mobs. And I'm like, I had a rogue, a warrior, and my paladin with me. And I'm like praying that the rolls will come out so that my warrior will shoot with its crossbow and hit one of those things. And it was definitely one of those things you have to monitor when you're going through that. The crafting, kind of brings back a little bit of memories. Not a whole bunch. It's not really the crafting style that I love, but you can craft scrolls, you can craft potions. I mean, you can craft just about anything you need in this game. And so, take a little bit of time as you're going through the missions to look for things. There'll be hidden boxes, there'll be hidden treasures. Don't just try to roll through it real quick. To Shane's point a minute ago about like getting the controls, I want to tell our listeners, like, you do have time to get used to these controls. This is not a game that's going to just keep shooting enemies at you 1,000 at a second. You have that engagement in between time. You can take your short rests. That's kind of like Nick kind of touched on it. That's probably the biggest thing in a game like this that you have to control, is when to take short rests versus long rests when you're going through a dungeon area or when you're going through an area. Usually right at the end, when you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm like completely spent, you're going to have 4 or 5 mobs. And then right there's your fire to take your long rest. So when you're early on going into the dungeon, don't blow your wad at everything initially. You need to be smart and and do that. I did end up dumbing it down towards the last couple of missions just because I was having a rough time. Initially, I was like, oh, I don't know what the guys are talking about. This ain't that bad. I'm, rolling through a couple of fights and feeling pretty good about myself. And then once I got to a point, it was like, okay, maybe I do need to dumb it down a little bit just so that I can enjoy the gameplay. So if you are a tabletop connoisseur, you probably will be fine on the normal or the medium level. And I'm sure if Pat and Nick had a little bit more time and not reviewing it, they would have been able to do all that as well. I am still a beginner, but I'm a little bit more advanced than Shane is with them. So it's a lot of fun, guys. I mean, it's so much to this game that I feel like I've put probably 8 to 15 hours. I don't know. I put about more than I have in the last few games, and that was refreshing with this game. So.
Yeah. Like I said, I enjoy the game, and I'm happy to say I enjoy the game. Only cussing I did was at me. I mean, oh god dang fingers. That was me playing this thing. And that was just, camera controls primarily was my only issue. Was my primary issue. The combat, it took me a little bit to get used to, but I got into it thanks to Nick telling me to put it on special needs difficulty, and it worked out great. I think they're at the very beginning when they're doing the bar scene. That was like one of my favorite things, just listening to them chat. That was pretty funny, when they were going through the tutorial stuff. When I was commenting on the voice acting, some of it's hit, some of it's missed. It's just, it's like Russ said, it's a lot of talk, a lot of characters in this game. But I do like the dialogue in it, though. I thought it was pretty fun, pretty interesting stuff. Go ahead.
I wanted to kind of, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sure others have thoughts, but I did want to kind of reiterate some things that Shane was saying when it comes to the tutorial and stuff. I don't want listeners to think that they're going to get when you start to make your own character. The nice thing about it is there's such a wonderful tutorial that even in the character portion of it, it will help you assign your highest ratings to their best stats. So if you were making a paladin and wisdom is their highest stat, or strength or constitution is one of their 3 highest stats, it'll help you when you do your rolls to assign those. So you don't have to necessarily stress about, oh my God, what if I put the wrong one? It'll give you hints along the way on what would be the best build for you. Those that like Patrick and Nick that played a lot of these stuff, they already know how they want to build that character and how they want to do that. So, and everything else is just aesthetics throughout the game, where they were, the way they reply back, what's their livelihood and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say that in the beginning, making your own characters is definitely the way to go, and they will show you the way.
All right. So overall, the game has been pretty great. I mean, ran into very few bugs. There's a few bugs in the game that I ran into. There's weird little things where beards don't quite work too well in the game. I don't know if you guys ran across any of the really heavily bearded where the beard doesn't move, but the mouth behind the beard is moving, and you're just like watching the mouth talk, and the beard's not moving anything. So the top lip is hiding behind the mustache, and the bottom one's going back there, and you're just like, the beard looks like it's just a fake hang-on beard of the guy, and you're just like, well, I don't think that's supposed to be there, So I ran into something like that, but no game-breaking bugs. This game is kind of bad for people like me because I'm a save scummer in games like this, and if you don't know what that means is I save all the time, and I have like 5 or 6 saves. And what ends up happening is I run into an encounter, and I'm like, crap, I couldn't quite get that charisma roll right to finagle that guy and to give me what I want. So I'm going to re-roll this a couple times until I get it or give up, depending on how high my charisma is or whatever, if I can talk to people into what I want. The armor and weapons, the equipment in this game isn't varied enough, in my opinion. For the length of the game, it's like a 40-hour game on average. Is not enough. There's not enough equipment variance, in my opinion, in this game. No matter whether it's crafting or not, because I could craft everything under the sun. You sell artifacts to factions to build up your reputation with those factions, and you could buy things from those factions. One faction has all the weapon schematic. One has scrolls. Another one has just generic gear that you could buy. Another one has magical gear. There's a few different factions in here, and you're going to want to pick one. You can't max them all out. There's no way. You can't. There's not enough material. There's not enough things to max them all out. So you have to pick it and decide where you want to go. Do I want to craft the highest level healing pots? Okay. I need to go see this one. Do I want to craft the highest and best gear? I need to go see this one. What are you willing to put up with? Because you get gear from looting, but you also get gear from crafting because you get crafting materials as you go along. So you have to make that determination. There's not just enough material to give you the highest rank faction or highest rank reputation with all the factions. There's a lot to this game, and it will take probably 40 hours on average to finish it for most people. Like I said, there's a lot, and there's so many different combinations. You can run through it again with a different class set just to try different combat moves out. Like I said, you can only have 4 players in there, 4 characters in your team, and there's 6 characters with a minimum of 3 subclasses each. Minimum. So that's quite a range. And remember, they license a D&D 5.1 rule set, which limits them to the number of races and classes they can borrow from the D&D franchise. So I think like 1 subclass. So they couldn't borrow. And so all the other subclasses are just things that they've dreamt up and built up, the spells that they're using for that. So, it's just like Russ said, it helps you build your own beginning class. It tells you, hey, this is a paladin. This is its primary stat, and these are its secondary 2 stats. And there's like 6 main stats for every character that you're rolling on. Anybody who's playing D&D knows that you have your wisdom, intelligence, constitution, dexterity, and strength. So you have your 6 main ones, and then you have a plethora of like secondary stats like attack and critical threshold and armor proficiency, what do they call it? Armor class and proficiency and initiative and all that kind of stuff. Typical D&D stuff. Very heavy in the D&D. So if you like D&D, tabletop, fantasy RPG, I think you'll love this game. I did. And I really will probably try a second grouping of people. I played with the very basic groups. Like I said, I played a sword and board warrior. I really screwed up my rogue because I should have picked a ranger instead of my rogue, because my rogue ended up being my ranger 90% of the time. And then I played a mage and a cleric. Very basic group makeup, but also probably one of the easier ones. If you're not familiar with it, you should stick with something similar to that, because that'll let you basically tackle any situation you run into, whether it's ranged or melee. Because if you have a melee heavy group, you're going to run into those flying creatures like Russ said. And guess what? If you don't have a mage that can cast flight on your tanks and melee people, then you hang it up. But it's kind of funny when you have a flying creature in there and you're like, guess what? I'll cast fly on my warrior, and you see your warrior fly up there and just start beating on it with a sword and board. So very fun game. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really think that you should give it a try if you've not played it. I don't even remember what the cost was on this one, because we got it on Game Pass Ultra, but I don't think it's that actually expensive if you buy it outright. I don't think it's like a full price game. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. I was trying to look and see what it was on Steam. Does anybody know what it is by chance on Steam? It's a $40 game on Steam. So it's not even a $60 game. It is, in my opinion, worth $60. I mean, it's a little bit if on the graphics, but if I can get over the graphics, I'm a graphics snob. I think most people can. And for $40, it's definitely worth a buy. $40, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Or hell, just grab Game Pass for a month, $15, play it. It's well worth it. I mean, it's not in my repertoire, and it's great. Yeah.
Game Pass on the PC is $10.
There you go. Yeah, I would recommend it. And like I said, this isn't my normal cup of tea, but this is one I definitely want to try to learn keyboard and mouse better. I think it's probably good for me to do it too. So I enjoyed it. I don't think the graphics were bad at all, Pat, but but that's just me. But I really enjoyed the game. I think the $40 is well worth it just for the quantity of gameplay you're going to get out of it. But yeah, it's definitely worth it in my opinion.
Cool. So it's a buy for me, and it's a buy sounds like even for Shane, who's probably the least proficient in these, but it's D&D. I mean, D&D is popular for it's D&D rule set. It's that style game. It's popular for a reason. Who doesn't want to run around as an elf and with a bow, or a dwarf with a sword and shield?
It's an easy buy at $40. It's an easy buy at $50. I think it's even an easy buy at $60. Yeah, the graphics are probably 5, maybe 6 years behind the times, but it's not. I mean, when you have that much, they had voice acting, which is not behind the times. That's absolutely wonderful. It's well worth it. Definitely I mean, it just paid for the PC side, I think, for a year for us. I mean, the worth of that game probably paid for the PC side for us. I mean, I don't know. At least that's my opinion. Definitely a great buy. Definitely a great pick. Would suggest it to anybody that likes RPGs, tabletops, even some beginners. If you want to get into something like that, it's a great start.
Yeah, definitely try it if you look at it and you have any inkling of interest and you have Game Pass, try it out. It's really worth it.
Yep, I agree. 2 thumbs up.
Where are they going?
IDT approved.
All right. Anybody else got any parting words for this one? I think this is a really good game and a really good. We almost missed this game, is what I should say.
Yep.
It just kind of snuck up. I forgot the Kickstarter happened a long time ago, and it just snuck out of nowhere. And we were like, "Hey, we should play this one." Cool. Anybody else got anything else on this one?
I don't think so. Definitely worth playing.
Yep.
Well, it looks like there's a line to the bathroom, the outhouse right now. Those beans are just running through the party. So I think we're going to have to go on this episode. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you comment on this video on if you picked it up or what your thoughts were on this one. And we hope to see you in the next episode.
See ya.